Hello and welcome to another video. I'm putting this in the motorcycling vlog even though I'm not motorcycling because it concerns motor cars and so that seems the appropriate place for it. So what I'm going to do is start off by asking you a question, and that is, have you got the car you wanted, or have you got the car the salesman wanted to sell you? Now, while you ponder that and think about your answer and what I might have to say about it, why I'm asking that question, I'll just say make a couple of disclosures. First of all is that I haven't bought a car since 2011. The one I bought then I've still got. When I bought that car, I went to a specific dealer to buy a specific car. So I wasn't swayed by sales techniques, or I wasn't interested in upgrades or base models or midstream models. I was interested in a specific car, and I bought that car, and I was happy with that car, and that's why I still have it. The second thing is that in asking that question and in things that I'm going to say, I'm not suggesting that any salesperson, any manufacturer, or any dealer is behaving in any way inappropriately or doing anything inordinate. I'm just asking a question. And the third thing is that the pictures that are used here are for illustrative purposes only. They don't represent an endorsement by me or a criticism by me of any vehicle, any maker, any brand or any model. And any mention of any particular car or model of that manufacturer doesn't represent an endorsement or criticism. It's just used for the purposes of illustration. Okay, so the question I ask you is, have you got the car you wanted, or did you end up with the car the salesman wanted to sell you? Let me put a few things in perspective first of all. And the reason I'm prompted to ask this question is I recently read an article written by a financial journalist called Victoria Devine in the Sydney Morning Herald, and the headline of the article was something along the lines of, "Is our love of big cars costing us money?" And the headline did its clickbait thing and got me to click on the article and read it, since I don't normally read the financial pages, but after seeing the headline, I clicked on it and read the article, and it got me thinking about this question. In 2024, that is this year, in Australia, there were 21.74 million registered vehicles. Now, of that, I suspect the largest percentage is the light passenger vehicles that we drive, or what are recently been classified as light commercial vehicles, and that is the dual cab utes and large SUVs. They've been reclassified as light commercial vehicles, so they will fit in because the manufacturers convinced the government that they would not meet the new vehicle emission standards, and so they've been exempted by being classified as light commercial vehicles. But by far the greatest percentage of that 21.74 million registered vehicles would be either light passenger vehicles, that is the cars that you and I drive, the sedans, the hatchbacks, the sports cars, or the large SUVs and dual cab utes. By the way, that 21.74 is an increase of 2.7% from 2023, and that's simply a factor of population growth. More people means more cars. We can say, well, it would be ideal if we had more people, but more people use public transport. The fact is people want cars, and as I've said on other videos, many Australian families, but not all, but many Australian families are in fact two-car families, and some are three-car families. And to substantiate that, I'd say that Australia's population is 26.7 million, so whilst we don't have one car for every person, we're not too far from it. Now, by comparison, the UK, for example, has about 66 million people and about 30 million cars, so one car for every two people. But all right, Victoria Devine is a finance journalist, and so when she's writing about cars, she's writing about them purely from a financial point of view. She's not talking about performance or how much torque or how many newton meters of torque or how many kilowatts of power. She's talking about the vehicle purely from a financial perspective. In the last calendar year that we have any knowledge, or that we have full data for, which is 2023, Australians bought 1.2 million new cars. And of that, 56% were SUVs or utes. 17% were passenger vehicles. Now, I suspect that there's a lot of things happen when people go to buy a new car. Budgets, of course, a concern. How much can you afford to pay? How much are the repayments going to be? What sort of trade-in are you going to get for the vehicle you currently have? Is there a cap price servicing plan? If you've previously had a particular brand and you've had a good experience with that brand, then there's every likelihood you'll go back to that brand and buy another one. In other words, if you've always had a Mazda and you got good experience with the Mazda dealer and you got a good deal on the car, then you'll probably go back and buy another Mazda, equally with Toyota and so on. So there are decisions you make with your head and there are decisions you make with your heart in terms of what does the car look like and what does it feel like and what does it say about you, and things like that. Now, according to Victoria Devine, the average cost to Australians of all transport costs is $458.82 per week, or 25.6k per year. So that figure factors in all transportation costs, including the purchase of the car or the repayments on the car, the servicing, the fuel, the registration, the insurance and so on. It also factors in any public transport costs and also any road tolls. But in fact, 46.2% of that cost is car repayments. Now, she suggests that looking at two different brands that are similarly equipped, but one is classified as a hatchback and the other one is classified as an SUV, there is a substantial difference in the price and there's a substantial difference in the repayments. So she gives the example of the Hyundai i30, and remember I'm just using these two vehicles for illustration purposes. I'm not endorsing or disendorsing them, but she says the Hyundai i30 is about $27,000. She says the Toyota RAV4 is about $35,000. Now the difference there is about $8,000 in the purchase price, but you might be able over the 4 or 5 years that you own that car to say, well, $8,000 I'm prepared to wear that because I like a RAV4 better than I like a Hyundai or whatever. But she says, consider this. If you had that car financed somehow on a loan at 5.6%, and assuming that 5.6% remains the rate for the 4 years of the loan, then the repayments on the Hyundai would be $527 per month, whereas the repayments on the Toyota would be $680 a month, and that represents a difference of $153 a month. Now, $153 a month over the 4 or 5 years or whatever it is that you pay off the car, I suspect is considerably more than the $8,000 in difference in price. Now, I started off this video by asking you if you had the car you wanted or you had the car the dealer wanted to sell you. When I talked about the 1.2 million new cars that were sold in 2023, 56% of which were utes or SUVs, the top 3 selling cars in Australia in 2023 were all dual cab utes. I suspect the Ford Range was in there somewhere, the Toyota Hilux was in there, and perhaps the Mitsubishi Triton might have been the other one. The other 7 vehicles were SUVs. Now, the manufacturers are going to point to those figures and say, people buy SUVs, so we make SUVs. The consumers might say, you only make SUVs and utes, so that's what we buy, because there's no other choice. There are very few hatchbacks available anymore. There are very few sedans available anymore. There are only SUVs, SUV urban crossovers, whatever that is, an SUV people mover crossover, whatever that is, but essentially there are SUVs and utes and then a few sedans and hatches. Now the problem with the bigger SUVs is that, first of all, not only are they more expensive, and as we've seen here the difference is $8,000, and that's on 2 of the lower league cars like the Hyundai i30 or the Toyota RAV4. Not only are the SUVs more expensive to buy, because they're bigger and heavier, they use more fuel, but they're also more expensive to insure because they cost more. And because they are bigger and heavier, they cause more damage when they're in accidents, whether to themselves or to another vehicle. That ultimately results in an increase in the insurance premiums of somebody. So you end up paying a whole lot more than just the purchase price for the car, because of insurance, because of fuel, because of add on the GST on top of that, and then registration and so forth, and you end up paying a lot more than just the sticker price. And this is where the question of, are you getting the car you want and need, or are you getting the car that the dealer wants to sell you? The dealers are incentivised by the manufacturer to sell particular cars. The salespeople are incentivised by the dealer principal to sell particular models and particular brands. They're perhaps given higher commissions for selling certain cars and certain models than they are for selling other cars or other models. And so whilst all of that is perfectly legal, and I'm not, as I said, I'm not suggesting there's anything untoward about it, I'm simply saying that sometimes the dealerships and the manufacturers are saying, well, these are the cars we make, therefore these are the cars that we're going to sell, or these are the cars that we're making in big numbers, we want to sell those and sell lots of them, so we'll push those cars really heavily to people who come through the door. And if you're just sort of wandering the showroom, not quite certain what you want, then you're perhaps susceptible to the suggestion that you might need an SUV when a small hatchback might suit your purposes. It'd be comforting to think that all of the utes that are being bought by tradies who are saying, well, I need a new ute because I've had the last one for X number of years and it's on its last legs and I'm turning it over, and there are so many more apprentices finishing their time and setting up their own carpentry and electrical and bricklayers and plumbers and whatever, and they've all got to get a ute for themselves. It'd be comforting to think that, but I'm not sure that that's the case. It'd be comforting to think that all the people that are buying SUVs are people who are intending to take those vehicles off-road. But you see lots and lots of SUVs that are in almost showroom condition day in, day out, and show no signs of ever having gone off-road. But the manufacturers are making these cars in big numbers, the dealers are encouraged to sell them, and the salespeople are incentivised and by commissions, or higher commissions perhaps, to sell them. So I don't have a solution. I'm not even necessarily saying it's a problem, I'm just making some observations. But when you're making your next purchase or thinking about your next purchase, perhaps budget, warranty, cap price servicing, but more importantly looking at, well, what are my family's motoring needs? How many people are in my family at the moment? For example, in my family there are myself and my wife and a dog. So the sedan that we have is more than adequate for our needs, and we could even get a smaller car, but there's no need for us to change our car at the moment because the one we have is doing perfectly well, perfectly fine. So if your family is at the point of downsizing because children are growing up and leaving home and so on, then maybe the big SUV that you've always had isn't necessarily the best option next time around in terms of, well, how much motoring are you going to do? Where are you going to go in this vehicle? And how many people are you going to carry in it? All right, well, thanks for watching and thanks for listening. I hope that's given you some food for thought, and maybe next time you're in the showroom you'll be thinking about some of those questions when you're considering your next car purchase.